roll call. I mean,
Strobush.
Here.
Leonard.
here.
Lam.
Here.
Elton.
Here.
You are absent.
Good. And then, so public comment, do we have any, MSA, are you gonna say anything for public comment? Sure, yeah, why not?
We always like it when you have stuff to say.
Yeah, we're coming to the end. Monarch is out there right now. After tonight, they're gonna pave the Center Street intersection tonight, and then they'll have 3 more intersections. All of the main line is done, and so depending on the weather, they'll start striping either tomorrow or Thursday, start putting lines down. Right now, tentative date for the road opening for pulling all the detours and stuff is October 29th. So party is still on for October 22nd, and then depending on how things go that next week with final cleanup stuff and making sure that all the signage is up and the roadway is safe to pull the detour off of, they will tentatively open that Friday, October 29th. So.
Good.
Yeah.
Long time coming.
Yeah. Yep.
Excellent, good, thank you. Just a couple other things, just as a reminder, I guess, the ribbon cutting is Friday at 3 o'clock at the intersection of Birch and 46 or Keller. Right, it's Birch, right? Is the intersection. Then trick or trot is this weekend, and then the business trick or treating is next weekend, right? The 30th.
Chad, we might do the ribbon cutting just a little bit after 3 o'clock. Just to
Okay.
give people a chance to get there. The party kind of starts at 3, but if we can do a ribbon cutting around like 3:30-ish.
Okay, great.
It might be good to note the Trick or Trot has a new location. They're gonna be doing it at the intermediate school now instead of out of North Park. doing
Yeah,
the
good.
detour.
Start
call.
and finish there.
Yeah.
Did I forget any other community events that are happening before the next meeting? I think that's all that. Okay, good. Excellent. All right. No other public comment? This will move on then to department head reports. City administrator.
Good evening, everybody. Training is nearing an end for the agenda software with minutes management with Ben Jansen, myself, and Peter Larson have been taking. My hope is that the new process will be up and running after we move it to the city hall. I have been attending weekly meetings with Market and Johnson and Ayers, as well as all subcontractors of the Ambray City Center. You can look for updates from their project managers as a result of those meetings included in OneDrive. We're moving forward with an anticipated move-in date before Christmas. They're saying Christmas Eve date. The project was delayed with some changes to the project due to supply shortages, etc. I, along with Ben Jansen and Jeff Mahoney, met with the Wisconsin Department of Health Services to participate in a flood resilience survey. The purpose of the survey is to identify strengths and weaknesses in our response to flood issues in the city. And I have the results in your OneDrive packets, so you can look at those. I, along with Mayor Isaacson, Ben Jansen, and School Administrator Sean Dorfler, met with the Safe Routes to School representative to discuss a program and next steps. I, along with Ben Jansen, also attended District 1 and 2 training in Rice Lake last Friday. And I, along with Police Chief Tom Marson, will be attending supervisory training on October 28th in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And then myself and Ben Jansen, as well as Jeff Mahoney, met with Cintas Supply to discuss public works uniforms and cleaning supplies for the new city center. I think we should dress up our crew and let everybody know who they are with their names, and I think it'll be very nice. And the 2022 budget is getting put together. The council, as well as Ben and myself, will discuss the progress tonight, as well as probably we'll maybe try to schedule a meeting next week, and then final maybe on November 16th. The budget hearing will take place on November 17th at 5 o'clock. Any questions?
Well, thank you. Ben?
Well, Patty stole like 90% of what I had. I will update the Safe Routes to School. I got an email this afternoon. They will be doing their walk audit on the 26th. That's where they basically drive around the neighborhoods near the school and look to see what the choke points are, stuff like that. And then this is actually inaccurate now. So I was finally seeing a slowdown on all the permits I was issuing. And then I had 2 people come in today and get new permits and 2 more call me. So They're not quite done. I'm gonna guess about 55 to 60 permits will be issued this year for fences, sheds, driveways, you name it.
Garages.
Garages, yeah. A lot of stuff going on in town.
The price of lumber must be down or something.
I think
People are
it is.
Feeling comfortable
So, yeah.
building
Other
it.
than that, I did pretty much the same things Patty did. She stole them all from me.
Good. Officer Marson?
Like I say,
Chief
Ben
Marson,
stole
I
my
mean,
stuff.
sorry.
He did.
Well, actually, Ben stole my stuff.
Yeah. Good evening. Beamer Police Department continues to stay busy on various items, and we'll just highlight a few there. There were 2 hoax calls received over the past few weeks. One incident was a fake ransom call that indicated student abduction, in which other local agencies came with a fast response, Clear Lake PD, and I don't know how many other agencies were there within just minutes. It was quickly determined that the student had not been taken, was safe at school, which is great news. The other incident that occurred over the weekend, we got a call that a person believed to have suicidal intentions, and that was again quickly determined to be a hoax. We continue to handle numerous mental health and welfare check calls. 2 incidents recently required transport out of our jurisdiction, one to Gunderson Hospital La Crosse and another to Winnebago Health in Oshkosh. There are numerous fraud and scam reports occurring almost daily that we get. Many are only attempts and some are incurring large financial losses. Awareness is the only means of preventing these scams from happening. Please advise, particularly elderly friends and family, not to answer calls from the unknown and distant locations and how to block numbers. Additionally, not to give out private or financial information over the phone, and to never deposit checks from unknown people, and to never send cash via courier services. We are also looking forward to the reopening of Keller Avenue soon, and anticipating a learning curve for some drivers due to the change in the lane structure and parking. Someone had mentioned November 1st there, that's when winter parking takes effect, which prohibits overnight parking from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. at any city street until April 15th. As always, if there's no inclement weather, then we always give a 2-week grace period, little reminders out there to get people acclimated to that. And also if an emergency arises, such as a breakdown or extra visitors over holiday season, just contact their administrative office there prior to parking there to get approval. Just a reminder, as Chad mentioned, Halloween is just a couple weeks away. Use caution traveling that Sunday evening, as there'll be much more foot traffic out there. Any questions at all?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Keller, you have anything that you want to say? Okay.
Just a couple things. I could have said it during the announcement portion, but first of all, I want to point out that Patty and I are the only ones that haven't teamed up to go to any training here, so we'll have to figure that out. Couple comments I have about upcoming events. We are planning on doing the big chili feed in November, so if everything keeps going on a little bit downward trend, we're planning on doing that live in the firehouse. And we just ask our community members to be mindful of others, and if you're seeing any symptoms or anything like that, please be courteous to others and take precautions. Fire prevention was this last month on the 11th. We had an open house and smokehouse and a couple of live burns with fire extinguisher training and stuff at the fire station. Thank everybody that came to that. We appreciate that. And then the last thing, and I'm sorry I'm putting Ben on the spot here, but I got another call from Federal Signal. So they have been in contact with us as far as replacing that old siren.
Yep, I got some quotes in the budget and talked to the installer last Tuesday.
Okay. And they were asking about maintenance on the other two. So if they're in town, they might as well do the maintenance and make sure we check the rest of our sirens. So they're ready to go next year. Other than that, that's all I have. If there's any questions, I know I haven't been here much, but I plan on starting to attend again. We did not have a committee meeting, so I don't have anything official to report from our committee meeting this month.
Okay, great. Thank you. Jeff? Nothing happening in the city, right? It's
all calm, everything's going well. Getting better every day. Okay. Apologize for not having it in the thing, OneDrive, been a little busy. like I say, everything's been pretty much on Main Street. We're trying to get the signs in. We've been having the guy go out and clean up some fire hydrants and they're flushing right now. So if you've got dirty water, we apologize, but it's just that time of year. Looking at the camera and it's not there.
That's right.
Doing flushing, doing a lot of leaf sweeping and stuff. Remind people, please don't blow your leaves out into the street. Just makes more for us to have to pick up. Another thing is at the sewer plant, we've got the main grid screen down. So please just extra and no baby wipes, feminine hygiene products, that kind of thing, because it's not working real good right now. The guys have Jeremy's going in like 4 or 5 times a day, even at night, to clean it. So it's not going real well. We're trying to get the shop and everything ready, get everything cleaned over and switch to winter time now. Had a couple guys in school taking classes for more sewer license. And if anybody needs the dump open, they can call the shop and we'll try to do it with the leaves and stuff. So that's all I got. Let's get questions.
Yeah, great, thank you.
There's a plan for winter, like 70.
I know.
degrees.
I saw St. Croix County with their wind plows and their solvent sprayers on today, and I'm like, no, it's too early.
It's not happening. All right, good. Amy's not here, so no library. Okay. Resolution 17, 2021 procurement policy is what's up next.
And this I said just basically because we're going to be having a special audit because of our Keller project for the borrowing for that. So we really didn't have anything true in place. And this will help us for future procurement for any CDBG dollars. That's very important that we have something in place for that. So went ahead and set up something. I think it would be very important to have this just for that purpose. So that's what this is.
And this essentially sets up a process for going through the bid processes for these larger projects. This is not going to really change anything on the day-to-day operations for department heads and as far as their purchasing needs are. So
Yeah, for the big projects.
I will make a motion to forward this to full city council for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in,
Can you put it resolution 17-2/2020?
any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to city council. Discussion regarding possible change order for Keller Avenue curb and gutter.
So, this is actually beyond just curb and gutter. I think.
Okay.
Is that what you're?
That's what the agenda says, yeah.
So it is concrete in general. We had talked about the curb and gutter previously with it being a little bit thin. And so we've kind of addressed that. The contractor did eventually sign that change order after our meeting last time. This is with regards to the concrete test. The compressive strength test came back a little bit lower than our specifications. Our specifications had a 28-day strength of 4,500 PSI that they were supposed to meet. And the majority of the tests, I would say probably between 60 to 75% of the tests came back deficient in that category, between curb and gutter and flat work. So 75% of the curb came back below the threshold and 65% of the flat work came back below that threshold. What we're seeing is that the eventual cure time, they did take a couple cylinders and test them later, which would kind of around like the 56-day mark. And those were coming back right around that 4,500 PSI. So the concrete that's on the ground, I don't think is necessarily any cause for concern. it is weaker than what we had expected it to be when we put out the bid, however. The way concrete kind of cures on it gains a lot of strength right away, and then it starts tipping off, and then it doesn't gain a whole lot of strength as time goes on after that. So it's kind of that exponential type curve that starts out quick and then tapers off. And so where we're at right now, with talking about, I think it's appropriate for the city to discuss a potential deduct, because this is not work that meets the specifications. You're not getting the product that you had put out to bid. And with the compressive strength test, 28-day is kind of a marker that most people use for their concrete testing, industry standard in that way. And so, because theoretically concrete gains strength, again, that curve, it will gain strength over time. And there's got to be some sort of marker to say that it should hit this compressive strength at this timeline. Otherwise, if you put like a max on it, somebody could drag it out 4 years and say, well, we're just waiting for it to get there. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I had a little bit of a discussion with Jeff one day regarding it. This feels like it's probably due to a supplier issue rather than a workmanship issue. The concrete testing was done. The test cylinders were prepared by Sampson Concrete and sent to American Engineering and Testing for actually breaking the cylinders.
And it's a certified guy who tested them too.
And yep, and there's a certification process to go through to make those cylinders and be certified to make those. The guy who's been doing them has been doing them for years and years. We worked with him on a number of different jobs, just as we've had Sampson Concrete on different jobs. And this guy has been around for years and prepares all their cylinders. And so I tend to think at that point that it's probably a concrete issue, a material supplier issue, as opposed to a workmanship issue. And so in talking with Jeff, one of the things that we kind of had discussed was potentially getting invoices from Sampson Concrete for what they got from their supplier for the materials and using that as a deduction off of their price. Because Sampson Concrete shouldn't necessarily take a hit on their labor and on their overhead and all of those costs due to a supplier issue. Ultimately, it does come back to them because they chose their supplier, and there is a little bit of accountability there that has to happen. But just so you kind of get rough numbers of what we're talking about for the curb, just calculating it out, and I haven't gotten the exact invoices, but I'm using $110 a cubic yard, which is in the ballpark. And so these are rough numbers still, but that would come out to about a 68% deduct. That 68% of the curb price is material, and the other 32% is labor on that
Say that again, $110
per cubic yard.
per yard,
Yep. And so I've
68% of that number is material.
No,
No,
sorry.
68%, that's 68% of the cost of the bid.
Yeah, so their bid price is
Material,
$11.50 a foot per
Okay.
curb. And so what I did was I figured out the cross-sectional area, got a footage on that, and kind of figured out how many feet they could get from a cubic yard of concrete. And then once I figured out what that price would be at that $11.50 a foot, that would be they can pour 14, just over 14 feet with a cubic yard of concrete. And so it works out roughly to $161.69 per yard that they're getting paid at their bid price. And so if we take $110 off of that for material, you're left with that $51.59 in labor. And so at that point, that would be what we would be considering paying for if the material is defective. And I went through the same process with the 5-inch sidewalk and 7-inch sidewalk. Which resulted the 5-inch sidewalk, about 37% of that is material price. And the 7-inch sidewalk, about 38% is material. And then the rest would be labor, overhead, all of that sort of thing that's tacked on. There's another bid price for colored concrete, and I figured that out, but to be quite honest, I have no idea what a material cost from the supplier is on that. So I don't have a good deduct on that. I would assume that it's probably much higher because the labor itself shouldn't be much more than what it is to pour the 5 or the 7-inch, but the material price is obviously much higher adding that colored in. So again, we had talked about getting invoices from Semstone as kind of a place to start. One of the Samson Concrete has requested core samples out of the sidewalk. So what core samples are is they would take a little core, be about a 2-inch diameter hole, and they would core down in the sidewalk, and they'd pull that core out and they take that and retest that. And they can figure out the PSI at that point. My hunch is that most of those are going to come back at over 4,500 PSI. Because again, they've had at this point almost 100 days of cure time. Some of this concrete was poured in May or June. And so there's a lot of cure time on it. However, it still doesn't meet the, like I said, on that curve. If this is a 28-day, now we're out here. And so hitting that, they missed the 28-day, but they might eventually hit 4,500, but it doesn't mean that you're getting the ultimate strength that you would have had it hit that 28-day strength.
And there's no way to measure backwards on what that,
There kind of would be.
yeah. Big guess on what it would be at.
Yeah,
28.
there's I'm sure there's a percentage of strength over time that's pretty much known. It's probably a factor that you can use.
Yeah, and we actually have the 28-day results. So even if they take them now, we have the 28-day
Yeah.
results. So that's what they would make their curve out of, is that 7-day test, the 28-day test.
Yeah.
And if they tested a 56 or whatever, they'd have 3 data points to kind of put a curve in. And now if we get a 100-day test, it should kind of fill in that curve a little more. So, but we do have the 28-day test for most of them already.
So has anybody talked to the concrete manufacturer?
I am assuming that Samson Concrete has talked to the supplier. I'm not sure. I mean, Samson obviously knows about this. They requested core samples. The way that the contracting works, your contract is with A1. A1's contract is with Samson. Samson has a supplier. So it's like 3 levels removed from us. So in some ways it's their responsibility to contract and coordinate with that. So I'm not sure if that's happened yet or not.
We just have to determine how much we're gonna ask for a deduct on this.
Yeah. And what is a fair proposal? And then I
It
would,
sounds like you need to get the invoices and get accurate cost numbers first.
if that's how you would like to go, you could just have a blanket like, well, we want to be done with this 30% deduct. And just offer that. And so if you'd like to go the route of trying to not pay for material, but pay for labor, then yes, we need the invoices to make sure that we're doing that fairly.
I think that's the fairest that we
I
can
think
do towards the
Well, I
contract.
think it would also be the way that you can tie it directly to the cause and effect, so that if they have to go back to Sandstone for an adjustment, they have something to go back on too. So I would think that would be better for both sides.
Mm.
Maybe more work. Takes longer.
It's more work, but yep, we'll do it.
Well, I'm just saying, I think this is probably the way that would, like Tim said, the most
I mean,
fair.
as far as the labor side of it, how would you evaluate the labor? By what the
Same.
finished product is, the thickness, the finish on it, how long they had cure, all these other construction factors, and those don't seem to be a mitigating factor.
No.
Weather wasn't a mitigating factor. Yeah, unless you can tie something else to the labor part of it.
Right.
And it sounds like you are not even, but that's not an issue.
From what I see out there, the workmanship seems to be satisfactory,
Mhm.
and with the intent of the contract. Again, with watching Samson place it, I think they placed it via industry standard methods. there's nothing that was alarming to me about the way that they did things. So I do think it's probably more of a materials issue than a workmanship issue.
It's not a process thing. They did it right.
And considering the scope, I mean, we're not talking just a small little area either.
No.
I mean, it's
No,
No, yeah, it's,
multiple.
Yeah.
So, I mean, lead me to believe that it is definitely the material.
It sounds like the invoice method is the way that we need to
I
go.
don't know if we need to make a motion to that effect or not, but that's the route I would like to take, I think, is take the invoice method and then we can have an accurate number that,
I'm sure they have they can tell you to the yard how much they used in this project. I mean, that's
that's their business.
yeah,
probably
they-
a running total of that every, week that they put it in.
Right, yep, and we've got all the dates and everything of where the concrete was poured and things like that. So if it came down to for the cores, which again, they may take them. It kind of, in some ways it depended on what you all wanted to do with that, because if you want to pursue a deduct, regardless of what the core strength comes back at, for this, 100-day concrete or whatever, they might not even do them because there's a chance that they would pay for all this extra testing,
Yeah.
and then that would be out of their pocket. And so,
Well, based on what the standard, requirement was at the test period, you would also be able to extrapolate at that 100 days what it should be at that point too.
yes,
So no matter what,
But they did take the core samples they were required to take,
right,
and they failed, so I don't,
I think that's
Yeah.
the checkpoint right there.
Sounds to me like we're putting more 2-inch holes in our concrete that
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too much
we
in
talked
favor
about
of
that, we
drilling.
Put them off to the side. And
The only
they
reason I
wouldn't be
could-
on the main rock.
The reason I could think of doing that is in case the core samples were done incorrectly or were somehow faulty, but it doesn't sound like.
It would
That would
seem,
be the
it
case
would
at all.
seem to me that if somebody went to Samstone, knowing what size they are, and said, you sold us 1,000 yards of inferior
Inferior.
product, that they would send a team of folks out here to drill, to say, we'll pay you to cut holes in your sidewalk because we want to test this to find out what was going on. The obvious answer is you missed a bag per load or 2 bags per load of something cement, or you got inferior cement from your supplier. Maybe Samstone owns their own mines, but I don't know, but they're a big enough company that's multi-billion dollars. I'm sure they don't want to put out bad products, so.
They have a record of their mix too.
then I'll take this back to the contractor, kind of let them know. I mean, I guess to update you, I talked with Jeff on it, and if we were gonna do this the way that, whatever, if it would be the way that our standard spec is written, which wasn't included in this one, but if it were our standard spec, they would end up drilling about 60 cores, which was just too much. We don't want 60 holes on the sidewalk. Talking with Jeff and with the contractor, we kind of thought that like 10 to 12 range would be more acceptable, and kind of put them on side streets. We're hoping not to have any, on the main drag down through there. And I've requested that they don't do any in the curb and gutter either.
Kind of
Just because that-
introduces a weak point right there.
Yep, introduces a weak point, and there's water and salt that sit and run in the curb and gutter, so. I've requested that they don't do it in the curb and gutter, but the sidewalks would kind of be around the corners from buildings and on side streets. And again, it'd be about a 2-inch diameter hole, and then they would fill it back in. And probably epoxy it over the top so it's kind of watertight over the top. But to avoid a 60 polka dot stuff through the whole project, we kind of approved a smaller smattering of those. So. But
how long do you think you're going to need to get this other information to us? Should we put it on the next council agenda, which is 2 weeks, or committee of the whole, which is 4 weeks?
I would like to put it on the next council meeting. I will do my best to get the information as quickly as possible.
If you can't, you
Yep.
can't. You know.
No,
At
yeah.
least we'll know where it's going.
Yeah, and so I think, yeah, I think tonight I was hoping to hear your feelings and possibly put together a change order on this. To be dealt with at your November meeting, because my guess is that there's going to be a pay request at your November meeting as well. And at this point, the majority of the outstanding work on the pay request is concrete. So we'll need to address it before we address the pay request.
So how should we officially do this? Should we table this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
Motion to table this agenda item until council.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Table.
Maybe we could sell some 2-inch diameter medallion spots that people could sponsor and just have a little
I
marker.
survived.
Maybe
Put
we could
somebody's
get like a
name.
challenge coin thing that we could put in there, you know, like this was a spot that, you know, Matt Johnson sat on.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be historical. That t-shirt.
I'm encouraging us to think. What is it outside?
Good.
Kind of cool, stainless.
We can call it the center of the world. Keller Avenue City Center borrowing discussion.
That's on your OneDrive. We actually have Baird is going to be coming for our next council meeting. I
Okay.
just kind of want to give you a heads up. This is kind of what I have put together. We had the 900 and the 1.4.
Can you tell me what the,
Keller in there as well.
can you tell me what the file name? There's a lot on the OneDrive.
Bear Capital Geo bonding docs.
Okay.
It's what?
Your capital geo bonding docs. So the way it's set up, I believe the first one is for Keller. Because the city has to pay their portion. Now we broke down the second and third as 900 and 1.4 for the city center. I'm going to make a suggestion that if we do borrow either of those, we're gonna have to think about borrowing for capital expenses, because the way the budget is set up, we don't have anything set up in capital. Because we had to meet the ERP expenditure restraint. And in order to do that, I had to move capital out of there. And those are types of things that we need to borrow for.
So this is informational right now.
I would say, yeah, just kind of cogitate and think about it. But I am having Justin come on the 3rd and just give a presentation, and we should decide something. The way it's figured out into the budget right now, I think we've got it figured in for the max, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got it figured out for the max in the budget currently. So just to cover our bases.
The way that he's got it worked out, the difference between the 900,000 and the 1.4 million is like $900 next year. Because the way he's got it laid out, he's assuming we're gonna refinance it in 2031. No matter which way we go. So basically the loan payments are the same, no matter which way we borrow.
So the max you're talking about is the 1.1 plus the 900 plus the 1.4.
No, the max is the 1.1 plus the 1.4.
Okay, all right.
That's the max.
The 1.1,
That's for
that's
Keller.
pretty much non-negotiable. It's
Right.
the road.
I'm sorry, say that one more time. It's the 1.1 plus the 1.4. So where does the 900 come in?
That's the
option
lower
two.
number. That's another option. For additional borrowing. We went 900 and we went 1.4. We went the max.
Yeah, because the 1.1 is fixed.
Yep.
It's there.
1.1 is not negotiable. That is for Keller.
I understand. Okay.
And the 1.4 is more so we can cover capital expenses as well.
Mhm.
And this will cover then the borrowing required for the city center?
Yes.
plus capital. Okay,
plus capital.
yeah. I need to-
And I've got a list, you know, I
Look
don't
at
have
this one.
figures
Mhm.
for, we could talk about that in budget, but kind of what we would need for the city center.
We've got quite a few unknowns that we're still working on, so
Exactly.
that's where the issues come up.
Yeah.
Just to have it would be a really good idea.
And that's on top of the 4.2 that we already have. Yes. Or 4.25, right, 4.25. Any other questions or thoughts on this? I need time to digest it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I want to give you some. We'll talk a little more budget too, but
Guess we'll move on to agenda number 6, website services invoice.
And this I received in my email from a local person who claims they did website services for us. They set up our calendar, etc. I had no knowledge at all what these costs were gonna be. I mean, and I never got a contract. I mean, I have no clue that this is legit, that these hours were spent. I'm sure they were. I'm not sure, but I don't know. But that's why I'm bringing it to you. See what your thoughts are.
If I recall, when all of this stuff started, it was, you weren't involved, if Paul was. And unfortunately, without him here, we don't really know what the
No,
scope
and
is.
and then I actually pulled this person aside and I said, I would really like to have a contract,
Mhm.
something in writing. Because you're working for the city,
Well, ad hoc is not a
no,
good way to go.
no. And I never received said contract. And I never knew what the costs were gonna be. I said, I'd like to know what your costs are per hour and what the total cost will be, and I got this a year after the fact.
I guess I don't also know where's the direction come from?
It wasn't me.
No, I know that, that was just an open question. I don't know
Okay.
if how you ask for something to get it done in this process. Somebody must ask.
But I thought we sent city staff to training on the website.
We did.
Why isn't city staff doing this?
We were.
Yeah, I think we need a little more explanation on who gave this
It might be fine.
contractor permission to do this. Because $4,800 is a big chunk of money.
Yes, it is. It was not budgeted for. I know that.
And 18 hours of creating graphics for annual events.
Is that possible that some of that is due to the community club?
No. It was all calendar. I think if you read it, it's calendar and web page.
It's broken down. A lot of the updates listed were taking place right around when we had the website update last year.
Yes.
Just based off the stuff I can see, with the ADA compliance, I know that took place with the website update. New calendar, things like that, it all happened kind of within a 2 months period when we did the update with Civic Engage. Met and trained like 6 times,
I did.
so.
And I was under the understanding that this person was helping us. I did not know any bill was coming in. I said, if there is a bill, we should have had a contract.
Mhm. Especially for that amount.
Okay, so we'll have to table it until we can get more information on how the request happened and where the work direction was coming from.
Right, what the expectation was.
Yep.
I agree.
Okay, let's move on to 2022 budget discussion. That's what I live for every year.
And we put a lot in your packet, or in your OneDrive. but you have in front of you the actual budget and broken out by revenues and expense. And it's been plugging in numbers. End result, I think that's end result is on here. isn't it?
Yeah, it's on all the funds. I had to stop Jeff from trying to blow through all our money again. He blacked out. What can I tell you?
Yeah.
When you took capital out, what is it that you took out for capital?
Out the tax levy that would be going to capital. The auditor yesterday, and the way the ERP works, if we levy money to the capital, that counts as an expense. He recommended we wipe that out and instead borrow for it, so that we wouldn't hit our expense limit. So if you go like, I think 21 is the capital projects page, it still has expenses budgeted for. Those are just numbers we spitball as an estimate. Ultimately, hammer out exactly what we want to do.
Mhm. Yeah, and I was wondering about that. I mean, there's only two things that are listed here as far as capital projects go. There, what are we referring to? And is this it?
Jeff might want to talk about, he was mentioning maybe adding one to the shop. Because we have the airport loader that we received, and it's sitting outside, and we have no place to put this loader.
That also, one of the things that they're gonna have to do eventually is put up a salt shed, salt sand shed, catching black from the DNR every year, because we've got a little square box we put it in.
Mhm.
They don't think that's real good. But the shop, you know, the vehicles are bigger. It's just got them jammed in there, kind of an angle down, with the vehicle in a wash bay. It's outgrowing it. Especially now with the loader and all these parts. Keep the whip sitting outside. Plan for it, and just kind of showed up.
Will the loader fit in the hangar? Isn't there a hangar open? Huh?
They didn't give us,
We've asked the question, and
Yeah.
apparently it won't work.
Because it seems like it'd be a lot cheaper to put a bigger door in than it would be to add on to a shop for a loader that is for the
That,
airport.
that's not our hangar though, I don't think. We don't own a hangar out there. I don't think.
we don't have a hangar out there.
I don't believe so.
So that answers that question.
So if we used a hangar, it would be.
They're gonna build one, but it's gonna probably be 40 years by the time they get through all their, whatever this survey they have to do and this and that. And then we can't use it. It's just for the airport.
You can rent it.
Yeah, I can rent it.
The loader or the,
Airport loader.
Blower, the straight, they got all kinds of equipment for this thing. It's amazing.
why are we storing it then?
Good question.
I
That was,
think,
maybe we should send them a bill for storage.
Correct.
That's your guys' decision.
Yeah, we have a place to store it.
It's kind of, taking money from this hand and putting it
It is,
this
but
hand.
it's-
But we need a place.
I
It
just-
shouldn't be sitting outside.
Where was it before?
It's been sitting outside all summer, but I can't.
Where was it before that?
We
Or is
just
it
got
new?
it. We just got it.
We just got it.
Got it.
It's a blower, big wing thing, got a bucket, a broom. It's
Prior to that, the airport had a grader that the city used for, we never paid anything to use the
That
grader.
was before me. I don't know how they had that one worked out. together.
No, it was I think the only caveat was that you had to use the grader to plow the airport first
Okay.
before you use it for anything else. But after that, as far as I know, you could use it.
And I think that changed now.
That's what I wondered. You said,
Cause I can use it, but I gotta plow theirs first. And then we can use it, but I gotta subtract all the hours I put on it and pay so much and. I said, no.
Is
Because
that
it was
an
received through a
airport
grant.
rule or is that an FAA rule where they got
FAA.
the funding?
that would be
from?
an
Like,
FAA.
that guy was telling me that.
Yeah, we got that grant from them, so that's.
Do we charge the airport for snow plowing? Man hours it should be.
Nothing.
Oh, that's, we should be doing that. Cause that's their machine. And if we're supplying the manpower to do that,
Hand flour, fuel, everything.
yeah,
Was fine with grader, because you know, we use it on the street.
cause you were able to use the grader, but if you can't use this as needed, then we should be
I
charging.
gotta get a hold of you and find out what the stipulations are.
Yeah. Well, either that or the airport can plow their own snow.
Okay.
If it's my plane, you can probably run.
Pardon? Yeah, no, I'm sure.
Just don't try to get.
It's too bad Ike isn't here because he would,
Yeah, he tells them, yeah.
what was going on with it, but that's as far as I know, that's not. Yeah, it worked out to a mutual advantage when we could use the equipment. And, you know, but if we can't use the equipment, then,
I mean, this grader shows up and it's all gotta be wired. There's nothing's hooked up yet. So we gotta put the blower on, do all the wiring, figure out how it works, you know.
where did it come from?
I think it was McLean. It dropped off.
My guess is that the airport, part of the airport funding should be able to be used for maintaining that, you know, or getting it operational.
We need to track our hours based upon what the work that you're working on that machine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have to work on that
Yeah.
for nothing.
No, if
That's,
it was delivered that way to the airport, make sure
Sure.
to use it, you'd have to hire.
and,
someone
and
to put it together.
the airport gets 150 grand a year for, you know, some of it's dedicated for that. But that, I don't think that has to be a city expense personally.
And they shouldn't be transferring that money if that's something they could use it, utilize it for these types of things. Yeah.
So is that what the 150,000 for public works capital equipment is for? Is the addition, or is that not built into the
It's
budget?
not built in.
Oh.
No.
Do we know what that cost potentially could be?
200?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm working on it right now, trying to get numbers.
Is there any funding out there for something like that?
Or is this a question and answer period? Is that what we're doing here?
Yeah, we're not making this.
Cool. I wonder why is the campground fees 10,476 for 2020 and only 5,500 for 2021? Because there's pretty obviously a major increase in the number of campers we had there this year.
There was, I based the 2021 number off the 2019 numbers because they were audited and firm. I was not correct. I was under. I believe I upped it. I'm looking for it right now.
Yeah, it went up to 7,000 for 2022.
Yeah, that was I talked to the auditor on that one. I wanted to move it up to 12 and he said put it at 7.
Nice guy.
Well, if you go over, cool, you got more money.
The
Yeah.
2021 column though is proposed too.
Yeah.
That's not
It's
accurate.
not accurate.
Yeah.
It's a guesstimate.
Because if 2020 was 10,476, we should be dramatically, I would think, have a dramatic increase over that. Not that that's big money, that's pocket
I think we're at
chunk
something like
change.
13,000 right now.
I was gonna say, it just, you know. I mean,
Seems like we could expand even camping.
oh, I'm
into-
amazed every time I go by there and I see, there's still a guy living, it's staying there. You shut the water off, didn't you, Jeff?
Nope.
Oh,
I didn't want to shut anybody off early, so we'll go November 1st.
oh,
So everybody knows park will be shut down November 1st.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
I was talking to the owl.
Very good.
And then I was asked, I get off track here, but I was asked by Ashley Long to read a letter.
That's the one we got.
Yep, that's in your drive. And they propose, she says, Patty, attached is a proposed 2022 budget document we used to begin our discussions at the library board meeting last night. Due to Amy and John both being unable to participate in last night's discussion, these line items are placeholders until further library board discussions take place. The library board approved the appropriation request of $230,000 based on lengthy discussion, as well as the following factors. Number one, staffing multiple levels with multiple service points. Number two, Act 150 funding has decreased for 2022. Number three, cleaning janitorial expenses are unknown. Number four, utility expenses are unknown. Number five, maintenance expenses are unknown. These are unknown expenses moving into and establishing services in the new location. Please read this letter aloud to the council, as I will not be able to attend the meeting this evening. I have a couple answers to your questions. There's two service points. There's a main level and there's a lower level. That's where the library currently would have their service points. The director is on the main level and the youth director is on the lower level. There's always somebody on both levels. Act 115 has decreased, and I don't know what the reason was for that. Not real sure.
I wasn't able to attend the meeting last night. Technical reasons.
Okay. And then cleaning janitorial expenses are unknown. They pay $880 a month currently, and they do not clean daily, they clean twice a week. And the utility expenses are unknown. That could be correct. However, we have a pretty good estimate. We set that up earlier when we were doing all of this. And Chad remembers that. We have a pretty good feel for what the utility expenses will be at the new building. They will be less than what they are now.
Plus, you won't have the lease payment either.
Correct. And then the maintenance expenses are unknown. It's a city-owned building. I can't see why they would have maintenance expenses on the building. Not quite sure on that question.
Also, it'll be new, so I hope there's not many maintenance
But you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, it's
Yeah.
a city-owned building, so the city is responsible for the maintenance of that building, so I don't know what that question is.
So it's from 200 last year to 230 for this year. These are asked.
Are we making recommendations on this or just, this is just FYI? or-
That's what they want, and the letter was that, I was asked to read the letter tonight.
Yeah, when in the proposed budget, it's two new hires,
Shouldn't hire us yet.
staff, new facility.
What page are you on?
It's
One
actually
different-
it's in the actual
It's a
library.
separate one. There's one for proposed library budget in the same folder.
It's not in the paper packet, right? It's in OneDrive.
It's in OneDrive.
Under what
The 2022 budget worksheet.
updated
No,
expenditure?
no, it's
Oh,
in our,
sure, sure.
in our folder. It's, yeah, proposed library budget.
There we go.
And I just want to give everybody kind of a school and how we pay PTO. The library, when they were off all that time, they earned PTO even though they weren't working. And they used zero PTO but got paid. In my estimation, earning PTO means you're working. That's what PTO is. How do you get PTO building up? and you're not working. I thought I'd throw that out.
I asked that question of the director before, and she says that they were working. Was there a way to measure?
I
their
don't
work?
know. I guess I don't know.
You know, I'm asking the wrong person.
Yep, but it's kind of a valid point. I mean,
Because here's the other thing, in their 2020 budget and their 2021 budget, when they have not been open to full hours and activities, there was no cost savings either year.
I'm having a real issue with the library with it not being opened, with the director particularly not showing up for 5-6 months at a time. I understand you can do some work from home, but you know, nobody had 6 months off last year for anything, whether it was COVID or not.
And your cleaning expenses for 880 a month never changed.
And nobody was there.
And nobody was there.
Yeah. The staff that worked, you know, they put in hours, but there were, I mean, we're paying a library director, then it seems to me you can't direct from home because you can't see what your employees are doing or how they're gainfully employed they are. You know, I'm getting personally just a little, I've heard enough of I want for the library, and we have to have this, we have to have that.
Well, we've had to cut out of our budget to meet the expenditure restraint.
Yeah, I understand that, you
And
know,
that's a tough thing, you know, but we had to do it to get to that figure so that we didn't lose out on that 50-some thousand dollars that we
Yeah.
get every year from the state.
I should add on to that. Currently, to qualify, I budgeted the same exact appropriation we gave last year, 200,000. If that goes up at all, we lose all the ERP funding, because that does count against our expenditure restraint program.
So in this budget proposal here, you have it at 200,000.
Yes.
Flat.
I think it'd be interesting to find out what's happened to the Act 150 money.
I'm curious about that too, because I don't know, this Act 150 money should have been from pre-COVID. I think if I'm doing the calculation right in my head. So what's going to happen now next year when we're dealing with the full COVID year? Is it going to go down again? There didn't seem to be an awful lot of concern on the part, you know, of the library in general during the point in time that we were closed, that, oh, they'll figure out at some point in time how we're going to be compensated if there's not circulation, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I'm concerned about it because that's money coming in. And I'm concerned about next year, what's going to happen.
Well, it seems to me that the county isn't offering to cut their tax levy because they didn't want to pay as much Act 150 money as they have in previous years.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what it comes to, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So if the county's saying you didn't circulate as many books, so we're not going to give you as much money, are we trying to make it up out of the city taxpayers at that point in time? You know. And it may be that lo and behold, you have to offer less.
And Polk County and St. Croix County, their funding level has not changed since last year. So
Right.
it was the same 100% and 95% as it was.
And Fran
going forward this year.
Fran mentioned that when she was here with her county report, that she was going to make a motion to fund Act 150 at 100%,
Mhm.
right? So.
For next year. But yeah, I was asked to read the letter.
So it seems like there's a lot of questions here. You know, first off, what were these people doing when they were off on, you know, when the library was closed during COVID? You know, how did we measure their work? I mean, you know, and Rick is very correct that, you know, the director can be gone for a day or two here or there and still work remotely, but they can't be gone extended periods of time either. So there needs to be some accountability for, you know, why are we still incurring all these expenses when they're not open for business? And I think maybe we need to do an audit of some sort to justify those expenses. As far as budget is concerned, I agree with you as far as the maintenance and the utilities. I think those are all going to be way less.
Yep.
Last year, what was the city's contribution last year?
200,000.
200,000. I think this year we keep it at 200,000 because I think they're going to incur less expense. Now, I know the library wants to do all this stuff, but perhaps they need to start cutting back on some services as well, just because there's just not enough money out there. I mean, I'd love to be able to run a 24-hour, 7-day a week, 365-day a week library with all the amenities to it, but there's only so much money out there.
The other piece of the puzzle, and I think that this piece, I think, is for every single department, is when you're discussing proposed versus, I'm guessing you're taking year to date and then expanding that out for the year when you're coming up with a proposed number. So I don't, I mean, it's kind of hard for us. I haven't seen their financials. I don't know where they are at this point in time. I would think that it would be much less than what was budgeted, but it's sounding like that's not the case. And so since we, every department needs to be
So
operating.
who
its own
manages
way.
the financials for the library? Is that done by the director? Is that done by the city? I know we write the checks.
They do their own.
Oh, they do their
Yeah,
own.
we don't handle their, we just write their checks.
So they manage all their books.
They do.
Well,
And perhaps we need,
no, not really. The checks all download into the same software. What they're managing is what's referred to as the now account, which is not really used for programming or anything like that. That's where donations come into and where other things are paid from. So when we're talking this budget number, it's everything that comes from the city, from all of the bills and money coming in, et cetera, et cetera. It's all done on your software.
Yes, workforce.
So that's all.
Okay.
But
The
they
now
they
account,
approve the bills.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there
Which
is a
is by
whole
staff.
separate account that is not utilized for programming because programming is actually budgeted. This extra account is used like when donations come in, that's where it goes to. It's for additional purchases of, like, let's say large print books, those kinds of things are not budget items. They're paid for out of this now account, which is mainly funded by donations. Mhm.
so is that account audited?
By, it's reviewed,
Anybody?
it's reviewed by the library board monthly.
And who has access to spend out of that account? Just the director?
And on all of this stuff, it's dictated by state statute that we don't have the authority to tell them how to spend their money.
Correct.
So even, I mean, can we even ask for things, right? Because
They're your employees.
Mhm.
So when it comes to payroll things, they're city employees.
Okay.
So,
But looking at the numbers here, I mean, 27,270 was the condo fees alone. I mean, there's the difference.
Yeah.
And then if we reduce gas prices, sewer, water, electricity in the new facility, or even if we maintain them the same, we're still down to 200,000. So, and what's the 2 new employees for?
They're going to staff those multiple service types.
How many employees do we have now?
11,
there's 11 employees in the library
Yes.
full-time.
no,
it's only 2 full-time.
2 full-time,
9 part-time.
9 part-time.
So what's the total FTE? Do we know the total?
I didn't hear you.
What's the total FTE? Do we know?
I don't know what that is, actually. There is always 2 people on at any one time. There's never just one person in the building. So to me, that answers the multiple levels, but I don't know. I mean, we're making assumptions based on things that we do not know yet.
Right, and
So-
if somebody's,
That's really hard.
if somebody's asking for staffing increase of 2 full-time people, what's their job
Justification
description?
for it?
Well, what's the job description?
Mhm.
I realize we don't have control of it, but what are they gonna do?
I know I saw it on their website. The job description. the part-time and
Yes, for me, if they want, I mean, any group that wants money, I would prefer more of a exact proposal, sit in front of us, this is what we need, this is why we need it.
That's how we spend our money.
This is how we're spending our money, and the same is for Jeff and Officer or Chief Morrison as well.
Oh, he's really digging the office.
I don't know why, I'm
I'd feel
sorry,
offended.
I'm trying not to offend you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
listen to Dave, I'm sorry.
Good, never mind, carry on.
Never mind.
I'll watch it tonight.
Yeah.
I know where you live.
Okay, good.
He knows your license.
So, yeah, it's, I prefer more formal presentations and a budget sheet. Because it helps us make better and more informed decisions. I'm more inclined to fund things if I understand them better.
According to our website, they're looking for a youth librarian part-time,
Yes.
an adult part-time librarian assistant.
We heard
Well,
from
the budget would reflect the youth librarian because that's an essential piece that would have already been budgeted. It's just that we don't have one currently. So that's already in the budget. So the additional 2 people are in addition to, so take that one out of the mix. It's 2 other people, whether they're full-time or part-time, I do not know.
What about the cemetery board? Have they?
he's gonna get those figures to me, but he said it'll probably be less than what they had last year.
Okay.
He said you can plug the numbers in from last year, but it'll be less, he thinks.
Okay.
And that's Jim Needle.
Yep.
Well, back to the library matter, I think that there's questions that need to be answered before we can really set anything on that.
So if we are having a meeting potentially next week about
Yeah.
budget, can we make sure we invite
Oh, definitely.
either
That was gonna be my next question.
Yeah. Amy or
Would
Ashley
Tuesday
or
work
both?
for everyone? Next Tuesday?
I'm assuming at 5 o'clock is typical. I can't answer that, but I think I can make it work.
I think I can.
Yeah.
It looks good for me.
Contain your enthusiasm.
I tried to take next week as vacation. It did not happen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean,
It's,
6
this is the
works better
last
for me
of,
than 5, but. I can figure something out. Okay, any more budget thoughts?
Is there anything you want from us? Anything that you would like us to share?
I'll speak to something that's in here regarding insurance premiums. In talking with Patty, as is kind of nationwide, whether anybody's aware of it or not, the cost of healthcare continues to go up. And I know that we were presented a 10% increase. I think that's been whittled down to 7%. And that's 7% increase is actually pretty good.
And it's with no changes to
Yeah.
what the employees currently have.
So I think that we are at some point in time going to need to, as a group, discuss where are we going to spend our money? It is not common at all to do payments in lieu of health insurance, not common
anymore.
at all. So is that something that we want to continue? Is it something that we need to get rid of? Also, I think it's very important for us to evaluate what dollar amount we as the city are contributing to people's insurance premiums and also an HSA, which because that's happening, both pieces of it. And generally, in my understanding, I don't work for a civic organization, but I realize that they're pretty generous, but this is not common in the real world, in the business sector. The types of percentages and cost shares with employees. So I think at some point in time, we're going to have to evaluate this with an 85% city cost and half match, like funding of an HSA 50%, 50%. Very
Currently, right
uncommon.
now, what you do is you have for family, it's 1,500, and for single, it's 750. And half of it is paid right at the beginning of the year, and then the second half, I think, is paid 6 months afterwards or something.
Well, that's for the HSA.
It's for the HSA.
Mhm.
Now, what's the difference? The full
3,000.
3,000, 6,000?
So I've worked in 2 school districts, so it's somewhat similar. And the funding was 80%.
Yep.
Not 85, and no payment in lieu of.
So that might be something you want to address as a payment in lieu of health insurance and the 80/20.
Is there a way that you could, because I'm assuming that this is something you want to have on the agenda for perhaps a closed session for an upcoming meeting, because, you know, it's dealing with employee issues.
And I actually have something in your OneDrive about
Mhm.
this,
Yeah.
where it kind of details that a little better too. So
Yeah. Are you able to break those down by, we don't need to know name, but we need, but by individual, what the individual costs are?
Sure.
um,
Yeah, just give you the dollar.
Just,
amounts
yeah.
by- Okay, yeah, I've got them. I can get those to you.
Just more data on it, I
Right.
guess, on how it breaks down across the city.
I do think the in lieu of health insurance is saving the city money. Just something to think about, because like me personally, I take it from the wife. Because just hospital's exact same insurance. And you get what, 2,400 a year for not having it? I'm sure it costs more than that, sure, a family over the year. So just, I don't care either way, but just something to think about. It is saving the city money doing it. If you look at it that way. I don't.
Any other budget questions?
Can I bring up a couple about the police department?
Sure.
Proper time?
Sure.
Just say yes.
Yes,
Yeah, just say yes.
I said sure.
Feels good to say
I,
yes.
yeah, why say no when it feels so good to say yes? And why buy one when you can buy 2 for twice the price?
All right. I will listen to this meeting. Really, you could have, I just had a couple of things here. I think I got one expense that I would put under capital, and that is upgrading our RMS system. Currently used for the last 20+ years, they call Crime Star there, and they have an upgraded version there that one of our local agencies has, St. Croix Falls. The benefit of that is they can upload photos, videos, almost unlimited space. They can scan documents and just a variety of features there. Crime Star allows what we've paid to deduct that from what the cost would be there. So with the upgrade and the SQL server, it would be under 10 grand.
Do they do a cloud option?
They don't do a cloud option right now. They do purely to, if you want to put something on your phone to be able to check something, but no,
Right.
they don't have a purely cloud option there, but.
You know,
And-
Pete
and
and I
I-
were talking about that a little bit.
And I provided them that information there, so. The other thing I wanted to talk about was.
Is that in the budget, or that's additional on top of what?
It is
That's-
not now. That was
okay.
one of the things we had to wipe with the auditor.
Okay,
That would be part of the capital expense. you'd have to borrow.
okay,
That fall under capital improvement.
Yeah,
The other thing would be is, and I'm just gonna give you a little background on a sergeant's position that, in 1995, Chief Holmes and the council approved the sergeant's position there. At the time, it was Senior Patrol Officer Meyer there, and he held that position for 15 years up to 2010. between 2010 and 2015, we went without a second in command position. And then in 2015, the council voted to have an assistant chief's position, basically as a second in command. That concluded in 2020, when that person left for another agency there. I would like to see the sergeant position re-implemented. It's an extra $1 above the top pay there. I can tell you that early in the year, I inquired from our staff there if they would have an interest in such position if it was approved there, and 3 of them did. And throughout the summer, when I took PTO there, each one of them had the opportunity to be like the OIC, the officer in charge, and things like that. So that's something that I would like to see reestablished there, because out of the last 26 years, we had a second in command for 20 years.
And that will be utilizing somebody that you currently have. You would
Correct,
just be
yes.
naming them
Yes,
second. in
that
command.
would be no additional staff member. They would just be a promotional process there that would go through. And like I said, for the contract, it's $1 above the top patrol pay. Otherwise, as for squad cars there,
Not buying a new car next year.
we are good this year.
Good, because they might be kind of thin next year.
Well, they may be, but I mean, mileage wise, our 2 main patrol squads, one has 30-some thousand miles on, and one has 60-some thousand miles on there. And quite frankly, when I first became chief, we were putting like 72,000 miles on a year. Now we're down to low to mid 60s and things like that. So with the calculations there, we are good this year. We upgraded our tasers. At some point in the near future, we'll have to look at upgrading our radios, but that's down the road there. So otherwise, I think we're sitting good. So those would be my 2 suggestions for consideration. There would be the records management system upgrade. And like I said, I think it's like $8 grand, but I will say under 10 or under and stuff like that, if there were any changes in that. And then to consider the sergeant's position.
Like I said, I would ask for then next week what the proposed cost of the sergeant increase would be.
The sergeant, I can answer that right now if you want me to.
Yeah,
The sergeants, depending on the person selected,
mhm.
some of them are at the top pay right now at the 6-year pay, which would probably amount to $2,500.
Okay,
If it was one of the other ones there that are like in year 3, things like that, well, then you're looking at maybe $12,000, but then that decreases because then they get near the top
mhm.
top pay there. But I mean, this would be year 1 next year, depending on if it was approved and who was selected there. Because the pay is $1 over the top pay there, which is 6 years there. And if it was one that was 3 years or whatever, well, then they would bump up those 3 steps and then up to there. So anywhere between $2,500 and $12,000, depending on the person that
Oh,
was.
see, I was thinking $1 above their current wage. So it's gonna depend upon who that person is, because if it's somebody that's on the lower
Right,
scale as
right.
far as
Yeah,
tenure.
yeah, and that's where you get that additional cost there, but then each year, that thought of that additional cost would go down, because then that person would normally be in the 4-year step, 5-year step, 6-year step. So biggest jump would be,
That first one, which could be up to 12,000, or otherwise it could be at the lower end.
yeah,
That helps.
Would that stay in the union then?
yes,
It's listed in there.
Anything else?
I think, it might be a good idea, but I gotta tell you, Tom, $914,000 is an awful pile of money for 3,000 people to come up with. And I realize you pay taxes in the city the same,
I'm one of
same as-
probably 2 or 3
same as
that
I
pay
do.
taxes in
but,
this town that,
we just are reaching a point where I don't know if you paid much attention, but I think you're probably 4 times almost what the street department is for maintaining our city. It just. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying that.
I know where you're coming from. And
It's just, we're
public
talking,
safety is a great expense to municipalities and things like that. I don't think our overall normal expenses besides wages have increased that much over the past 2 years there. But yeah, it is a lot of money. There's no doubt about it.
You'd mentioned uniforms, is that in the budget?
Yep.
Looks like there's a $6,500, 20% increase in operating supplies and expenses. Is there something being added there?
That
Did
is,
something go up
that would be those Caesar
contract?
there. We have contract, that new contract with the tasers that we bought there, but we still have the contract for the squad camera and cameras and the body cameras there. So that was the addition for that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ben. We're talking about that.
Any other budget questions?
so how much did our valuation go up this year?
It went down.
It went down 1.8 million.
It's in the two something.
It's in your budget. Worksheet.
Yeah.
That's the updated 2022 proposed. And that breaks down a mill rate and everything.
But on the plus side, the maintenance expense on Main Street should go down.
Yeah,
It's all brand new.
that's brand new. Yeah.
But we don't pay for
No,
that.
no potholes, no.
They tore every other road up though.
Yeah, how much is in the budget or whatever for fixing existing roads that are just,
That's one of the things they got.
Yeah, we got that to where it was.
Actually, we fixed it
Oh, we had a
because we
10.
had an extra 10 grand.
We had a 10 back in.
that, yeah, that's.
Just for you, Jeff.
All right.
I think we need to be realistic. There are roads that have to get fixed. I think that is something that we cannot cut that out. Since we're actually still talking, I'm wanting to know what the fire department capital equipment is and also what the firefighting equipment that's in the expense line of significantly more than last year. I want to know what those are as well.
And then he's backed up also because it's informed that some things are moved from the normal line items to capital expense.
I can start. So the capital expense, that was another one that I was recommending we wipe out and move to the capital expense fund. Where we borrow for that. It was $10,000. I put it at 75,000 because it would be a good idea to build up that fund because we have a lot of trucks to replace in the near future. As Rick and Chad know, we've been talking about that at fire committee for ever since we started. That was just a recommendation. That's not a hard and fast number ultimately.
Okay.
You guys decide what we end up borrowing for.
So what's the $20,000 in the firefighting equipment on the expense end?
If I recall correctly, and you might have to correct me, is your chainsaws,
Yeah,
different
That is
nozzles?
some of the smaller equipment that we thought was durable enough to consider
An
either
expense
under
versus a
capital
capital?
expense
Mhm.
or
Okay.
firefighter equipment.
Yep.
Things like chainsaws, some evacuation fans, new jaws. Better power jaws, which is the lion's share of that.
Okay, thank you.
And this is only the city's portion. There's the other municipalities that contribute to that as well, right?
Technically, that's the total fire budget, but we will be receiving money from Lincoln, Blackbrook and all of the.
There
Oh,
won't be
sure,
additional.
okay.
And that'll be.
So it's like
offset on the revenue
48%
side.
of that is what we
Inter,
would.
what-
No,
is that gonna be
no,
like
City doesn't pay
intergovernmental
48,
numbers?
it's like 30,
I think it's 39.
39, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we do have money coming on the back end from the township.
Yeah, we build
I saw it somewhere.
It's in the revenues.
Well, how does this work with this new fire committee as far as the process of approving budget? Does the fire committee have to approve your overall budget and then
That's what we
comes
did
the
this
city?
time around.
They
Yep.
did.
They
Yes.
did in September.
There's a mill rate.
And that, the committee's starting to function pretty well. I'm pretty happy with the function. I have been answering to them quite a bit. That's why I haven't been here. So I think the committee's doing a nice job.
Well, I don't think it's bad. I'm just wondering what the process was.
Right, yeah, they're kind of the head to approve the budget and then we bring it to council.
Okay, any other questions?
So on page 3, you're talking about revenues we get from other municipalities, is that correct? 170,000, is what we get reimbursed out of the 230. And say, I'm an employee of the city.
And then Sarah, the paving budget's at 210,000.
Yeah, I think
And that
I'm
was
just
picked up a
coming
little bit too,
to that, yeah.
for sidewalk maintenance. That was a big thing Jeff asked for. Extra money because our sidewalks are in bad shape.
Speaking of sidewalks, can I just ask a general question? I guess since you're here, I guess maybe that's a question for you, is
Eric, the sidewalk guy.
typically when, and I think this is something that we need the answer of before we start going into winter season, you're not supposed to put salt on a brand new sidewalk. So what are we supposed to do and how are we as business owners supposed to maintain our sidewalks? Going forward,
Yeah.
I guess.
When it comes to concrete in general, the less salt is your friend.
Mhm.
And I mean, as business owners, I know that's tough and you may have to lightly salt it. I'd encourage good shoveling habits the first year. I mean, clear as much off as you can with the shovels because when there's less on it, when it melts, it goes away instead of pooling up and turning into ice. But I get it. There's times that if we get an ice storm or something, you may have to salt your sidewalks just because
Mhm.
that's a real thing. We
And-
live in Wisconsin and that's a real thing.
Right, and so therefore the sidewalks won't be sealed in any way?
They
They
have
have-
been
they are.
sealed. Yeah,
Okay.
they're sealed already.
Okay,
But just in general, lighter salting is more beneficial for concrete.
there's some really good environmentally friendly stuff you can get done at the country store. Eat products work great.
Is there some way we could
They're
share that
purple.
with the business owners downtown? Because I'm sure a lot of them are
Yeah.
not.
You can go on the website.
Yep. Or if you've got an email list for all, I think there's an email list somewhere for all the business owners.
Maybe that'd be good information to share.
We could send it to them.
Taylor.
Also, Paul is now on video.
Oh, good,
Okay, good.
here he is.
All right, any other budget discussions? Okay, then I guess we'll go into closed session, Wisconsin State Statute 19.851E. Police union contract deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specific public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session.
Make a motion to go into closed session.
Second,
Roll call?
Earlbush,
yes.
Van Blarcom,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes,
Lamb,
Yes.
Felton,
Yes.
and Isaacson.
and Isaacson. I forgot he was on Zoom now. I see he said yes. to his move.
We have a.
We are in closed session. We can have 1.3 minutes.
Oh, we're half an hour
How do you
ahead.
stop it?
Well, how do I stop the call?
Yeah, we have to move.
And so. Done a couple times.
Competitive enrollment for the classroom.